All right, so we are on page 4, levels of organization. Please flip to the anticipation guide. Write true or false on the left-hand side. Number 1, an example of organ system is the heart. Explain. Number 2, unicellular means being made up of one cell. We'll explain later, but true, false, left-hand side. Flip back to the notes. We're again doing levels of organization. So we're going to start with the basics, just like we did with chemistry. The basis of chemistry is that everything is made, all matter is made up of atoms. Well, the basics of human, or not human, but the basics of life, or the smallest unit of life, is a cell. For example, there are blood cells, there are skin cells, there are muscle cells, there are onion cells, there are flower cells, there are pumpkin cells, all of this. They're the smallest unit of life is a cell, just like the smallest unit of matter is an atom. The next step you have is you add a bunch of cells together. When you add a group of cells together, they form tissue that work to perform a certain job. For instance, if you have a muscle cell and you get a bunch of muscle cells together, you'll get muscle tissue. Same with connective tissue, nervous system, epithelial tissue. And then when you start putting the tissues together, so you start with the cells and you get a bunch of cells together to form tissue, get a bunch of tissues to form together, to perform a specific task. It's called an organ. So like this, you have a heart. So it started with cardiac cells, then formed cardiac tissue, which then formed the cardiac organ, which is called a heart. And then you could have organs like your stomach, your brain, your lungs. And then when I add all those organs together, or a group of organs working together that perform a function, it's called an organ system. For instance, what you see here is a digestive system, where you have the stomach, the liver, the gallbladder, the bile duct, the colon, the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum. All of that is the digestive system, which is made up of all those organs that I just stated, which are made up of the organ tissues, which are made up of the cells. And then all together, living things performing life process by itself is called an organism. Like humans, dogs, cat, basically any living thing is an organism. And then we could look at a couple different types of organisms. The first type you have is the one that is made up of more than one cell. It's called multicellular, like humans, dogs, birds, plants, fish, ants, and so on. So when you see multi, think of more than one, like multi-universe, multivitamin. It means more than one is in it. And in this case, multicellular, like multi-cells. And then you got a thing called a unicellular. This is made up of only one cell. Examples, you have amoebas, which is this thing right here eating a couple other things. Bacteria or paramecium. So there are benefits to being multicellular. First and foremost, they're much larger in size. Like, think of humans. They are larger compared to like the bacteria that we just saw, or the amoeba we just saw. Much, much, much larger, meaning there are less predators or organisms trying to kill them. And they have a longer lifespan. Why? Well, because it's not limited to one cell. So if one cell dies, another cell replaces it. Whereas if you are unicellular, you're only made up of one cell. If it dies, you die. It's done. There's nothing else you can do. And then specialization. Just like I was saying before, if you have a heart cell and a bunch of heart cells together to make up heart tissue or cardiovascular tissue, and you have a bunch of cardiovascular tissue making up the heart, it is a specific job. That cell is only for the heart. It's not for the skin, the heart, and the lungs. It's just for the heart. So it maintains one thing, whereas a unicellular has multi-purposes, so it's not as efficient. It's getting pulled in different directions, whereas the specialization of these cells, it is more efficient. It is only for that one purpose. All right, so here's a fun fact. We can see with our naked eye a unicellular example, which is an egg. When you open it up to make breakfast, you can see the single cell. Most cells that we could see are needed. You need to have a microscope to actually see it. Like the one I had a couple slides back, which was the amoeba. You need a microscope to actually see that. All right, we are going to do quiz time. Do this on the back of the table of contents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, a group of what makes an organ? Is it cells, tissues, organ systems, or organisms? It's a group that makes up an organ. This is a tissue. The smallest unit of life in an organism is called, is it a tissue, cells, organ system, or organs? This is going to be cells. A heart is an example of what? Is it a cell, tissue, organ, organ system? This one is going to be an organ. Okay. So for an example of a unicellular organism includes all of the following except what? Amoeba, bacteria, ant, or paramecium. This one is going to be an ant. The amoeba, the bacteria, and the paramecium are all examples of unicellular organisms. Which of the following is not a benefit of being multicellular? So this is not. Is it larger size, longer lifespan, specialization, or more predators? This one is going to be more predators. Because you're multicellular, you're larger in size, which means you have less predators. All right, let's go to the anticipation guide. Okay. An example of an organ is the heart. Organ system is the heart. True or false? On the right-hand side, please. This is going to be false. The heart is an example of an organ. Just an organ, not an organ system. Number 2, unicellular means being made up of one cell. True or false? On the right-hand side. This one is going to be correct. True. Uni means one. Think of like a unicycle. There's only one wheel. So uni means one. That's the prefix. And cellular means cell. Think of like a cell phone. It's a cellular device. All right, summary. So let's start with the small group that we have seen today. A tissue is a group of cells, and an example is a skin cell. Let's do the next size up. So an organ is a group of tissues, and an example is a heart. Organ is a heart. All right, and then the last one we have is an organ system is a group of organs. An example of this is the digestive system. All right, so let's look at some benefits to having multiple cells instead of just one. So the first one we had was they're larger in size, meaning there's less predators. The next one is a longer lifespan, because if one cell dies, you have a replacement cell to come up with it. If you're one cell, if it dies, it dies. Like there's nothing replacing it. And then the last one we have is specialization. So that means that it is more efficient because it is only focusing on one task, for lack of a better term. All right, so that is it for the notes. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And I hope you guys have a great day.